Stole rats. You guys might recognize this plane. My buddy Kevin Quinn showed up here in Red Bluff.
Yep, yeah.
And check out this box he's got.
Oh, baby, look at this.
It is upgrade day. So we're gonna get rid of the old and put in the new. So we're gonna go full brake system. Calipers, masters.
We got everything laid out.
Everything good to go. I think we're gonna be able to use the existing brake line. Throw some adapters on there. Swap over the tires, and we'll see how long this takes. I'm gonna get time lapse going, and we'll get this thing put together. All right, so we got a rim mounted up.
How about an impact screwdriver?
Caliper mounted up.
Got one. You're gonna try to
Disc is in place. We had to run new brake lines because the old brake lines were the wrong size.
adapt it to that. I don't
And
need an Allen wrench.
up here we got the first master cylinder in there. We need to put the brake in, or the fitting on the end of the brake line here, and then this side will be all done. So this is a bit of a unique install because it is not the stock Carbon Cub landing gear. It's got the TK1 landing gear on there, so a couple things are different. The brake line was different, and then the axles are different, so we're dealing with that. There's a little bit of an issue with the spacing of the hubcap nut not having the right clearance on the cotter pin hole. So a couple little things that make it a little more difficult than a standard Carbon Cub install, but we're working through it, and just about done with the right side. Oh, look at that, man. That was worth it.
Look at that, Beringers. Man, it's been a tough day.
We got to do a little bit of work on the Beringer caps bolts. We need to re-drill the axle for the cotter pin. Come on in here. We've got new master cylinders, both sides.
Yeah, it would.
We also put in the stock parking brake valve off of the Carbon Cub. We were able to kind of make that work as well using a bunch of fittings. That's it. That took pretty much all day.
Because the ones that came out of there were half that thick.
There you go. Beringers on a Carbon Cub. Kevin Quinn rocking the Beringers. Looks pretty good. All right, so let's go through some of the Beringer parts that you get in your kit. Starting with from left to right, this is the brake regulator. This allows you to use this dial to change the pressure that is being applied to your caliper. So you can dial it down or dial back the pressure if you have smaller tires, dial it up if you have larger tires. It also has an anti-skid feature built into it. So this is basically your anti-lock brake block as well. This is an optional component. I highly recommend this if you're going to run the double caliper system and plan on switching between 26 or 29 inch Alaska bush wheels and then back to something smaller like an 8.5 or even smaller. It's really the only safe way to utilize those dual calipers with small tires. On the Kitfox full installation kit, we do have 4 master cylinders, so that's 2 for each side, and we're going to have brakes on my particular installation with the Kitfox 7. We are going to have co-pilot brakes, so For those, this is your parking brake. This is going to mount on the Kitfox 5 through 7. You can put it in this. You can put it anywhere you want, but there's a slot cut in the center console for this. There's 2 mounting bolt holes that's going to bolt up into the console. This lever is going to stick through it, and that's going to be your parking brake lever. And then it's got holes drilled in it so you can put some little handle on it if you like. All right, next we've got the reservoirs. These are the style that we came up with for the Kitfox. Because the way the master cylinders mount, you can't have the reservoir mounted on the master cylinders. There's not enough clearance between the frame. So these are the remote mount ones. So we're going to put these, we'll look and see what the best location is during the installation process. But you can really place these anywhere you want as long as they're above the highest point in any of the brake lines. These are the hubcaps that go on the wheels. Those come in your kit. And then we got in some of the hardware here. You're going to get a lot of these banjo bolts. That is the bolt that goes down through a banjo fitting and connects it to whatever component you're using. The next one that you're going to see a lot of is these HYD 002 OPs. These are basically a fitting that's going to go, we're going to swedge onto a brake line. So it's got the swedged end, and then it's a 20-degree bend into a banjo fitting. So we're going to use quite a few of those. The other one we have is a straight fitting, same thing. It doesn't have the bend, it's straight. That's an HYD 019 OP. And then for some of you that are just upgrading the wheels and brakes at the axle, these are the HYD 002 VC. And what this does, I'm pulling out so you can see, it allows you to take an AN-3 fitting, female fitting, and then connect it to an AN-3 male fitting on the end, and then it converts it to a banjo bolt. So you can take your AN brake lines, connect it to this, hook it right up to the caliper, and you're good to go. So those are good to have if you're doing that conversion install. Bag full of copper washers. Those go above and below each banjo fitting for a seal. And then the last fitting that is very unique is again, a compression fitting that goes on the brake line to the AN-3 female fitting. So that would actually work with the one I just talked about with the AN fitting, but that's how it screws on there. And so we use this one as an adapter to this, or on the brake, parking brake, you can see the AN-3 male fittings that are on there. That's what we're going to use to connect to them. We don't use banjo fittings where it exits the parking brake valve. We're going to use these, what are they? 008 OPs. So that's a list of your components. I'm going to go ahead and do some brake line assembly and show you guys how that works. All right, guys, so just let's run down real quick the weights on these. Just measured all these up. Brake regulator comes in at 0.56 pounds. The masters come in at 0.26, so a quarter of a pound. The reservoirs are 0.12 pounds. The parking brake, 0.28 pound. And then all the fittings, you know, they're all right in the range of 0.4, 0.04 up to, or down to 0.004. This will allow me, once we're done, we can count up how many of each of these we're going to use and which components you're going to use, and we'll have a total weight for the entire Beringer install. I also have to, of course, weigh up the brake line. I've got some extra, and I'm going to be doing some examples of how to do the brake line. All right, guys, so let's get ready to make up some brake lines. What we're going to be using is the stainless steel brake line, and we can use this throughout the entire airframe. However, there may be places where this stainless steel would be too abrasive against areas that may rub. There's two ways to handle that. You can either put some shrink wrap, usually a 1/4 inch shrink wrap will fit over that, and then you can shrink it down in the places you want to protect the brake line or protect the brake line from chafing on something. The other option is to use inside the stainless is just a nylon brake line, like you guys have probably seen, or it comes with the kit for the Grove brake system. So you can order some of that clear plastic brake line, and I can give you the dimensions of what this internal ID or the internal diameter of the brake line is. And you can use that instead. In the past, we weren't totally sure that was something you could do with these compression fittings because the backing nut, let me show you here, is designed to fit over the stainless steel sheath. And so you want a nice tight fit at the back. But in reality, it doesn't matter whether this is on there or not because the compression happens around this stem with this compression nut. Little fitting can just slide right over the plastic there. This is going to go inside there, and then that compression nut is going to slide over it and tighten it down. So it doesn't matter what's on the outside of that plastic sheath. The reason I'm covering this is because a lot of people who already have the brakes installed on a Kitfox and you guys want to upgrade to the Beringer, you got to go to this banjo fitting. And you're currently probably running Matco style fittings that run into your Grove master cylinders, Grove calipers, using these plastic brake lines. So if where the brake line comes down to the caliper, you cut off the fitting that's on there or remove it, you can put one of these banjo fittings directly onto that brake line and then attach it to the Beringer caliper. That would be the only change you would need to make to your brake line is right there at the caliper. Like I've tested in the past, you can use the Grove Masters with the Beringer calipers. It has been tested and it does work. However, obviously we're not going to cover any warranty or stand behind the operation of the brakes the same way that we would if you're using a complete Beringer system. The Beringer Masters are engineered and designed to go with the Beringer calipers. Now, that being said, the output pressure from a brake master, the PSI will vary between the Beringer, the Grove, the Cleveland, the Matco. So I personally have tested the Grove Masters and they do work. I know lots of people who've done that on Super Cubs with the Super Cub master cylinders and using the calipers on Beringer, but there's no guarantee that that is going to be a long-term solution. You can do that, but we obviously recommend that you do the complete Beringer system because it's all engineered to go together. Alright guys, so we're going to start by making up a brake line. What we're going to do is we're going to take the back compression nut and slide it over the brake end. Now, I've already started to fray one of the other sides, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on backwards and I'm going to slide it all the way up. So it'd be just like I just slid it over this end, but I've already started to fray this right now. So you're going to take a pick or a screwdriver or something like that, and you can just kind of get underneath the stainless braid and just kind of work back the edges a little bit like that. Enough so that you can take this fitting and fit it in there. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you don't have an oblong hole there. You want to kind of flatten out that hole like that. Okay, then we're going to take that and slide it over the top and make sure it's bottomed out so that the plastic part comes all the way up to the lip on this compression fitting. So it's on there nice and tight. Next, we're going to take the banjo engine fitting part. It has the stem that's going to go inside. Let me push it on. Okay, then we're going to slide that compression nut back up and start threading it in. And you can spin either one, but now it hasn't compressed it yet. And what you might want to do, just it helps out with the installation, is when you're making up the brake lines, don't compress the fitting yet, because when you do that, it kind of locks the position of the banjo fitting as far as being able to turn it. And there's a pre-bend that's kind of in all the brake lines. So if you leave this so you can adjust it around before you tighten it down, it will help you when you go to line up the banjo fitting with the masters or whatever part you're putting it on. Now granted, there's some washers that need to go on there. I'm just doing this quickly to show you what I'm talking about. So let's say this is mounted in there, and you don't want your brake line flexing. You see it, so you can let it spin. So you can get this brake line to follow its natural flex. And it's easier to get it set where you want it. Lock it in tight there, then compress your nut down, and then your brake line is in the orientation that you want it. If you do it where you tighten it down and it's stuck here, and then later on you're going to try to flex this stainless, it doesn't flex very well. It doesn't rotate at all. So you want to be able to have that availability to make your adjustments before you tighten that down. It's an important little trick. Okay, so that's one end. Let's say you were going to go from that over to, let's say the other style fitting. Same thing. It's the same compression end. You're just going to choose which end you need on your brake line and put those on there. So make up one end, run it to length to your next component, put the next end on, and you're good to go. That's pretty much it, you guys. It's really easy to do these brake lines. All right, guys, I want to take this opportunity to demonstrate how to put the Beringer wheels on a set of Alaskan bush wheels. So we got the wheel set up here, bush wheels over here. It's a pretty simple process, so let me walk you through it. The directions want you to use 10 Newton meters to put the screws in the wheel halves, fasten them together. So I have torque wrench, 10 Newton meters equals 88 inch-pounds, which is about 8 foot-pounds, just shy of that. So you can use any of those three measurements. There is an O-ring that is placed on the small half. That will go help join the two seams. It also allows you to use these wheels tubeless. So it's another option if you're running like a Desser Smooth Tundra 8.5. You don't need an inner tube. You can run the stems that are on here and the O-ring and run them tubeless. So it's pretty cool. Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to grab one of these wheels. A lot of you guys know that there's a red dot on the tire that you try to center with the stem. Since the bush wheels have the stem already in the tire, I'm going to put this stem opposite the stem on the tire to help balance the weight a little bit. I don't know if it matters, but that's how I'm going to do it. So simply just push the wheel down into the tire. The bush wheels are all pre-formed for the 6-inch, so they fit us in there really nice. Turn it over. Take your second half. You don't even really have to smash the tire down because they just fit so well. And then what I do is I'll take two of these screws. I'll lift the half up just a little bit to help line them up. Get one of them started in the hole. Started, and that's got me lined up. And I can go ahead and push it down in there. Now those halves are not totally together yet. I'm just going to slowly cinch down the screws to bring the halves together. Alright, so we got all our screws. The two halves are lined up. You're going to need a number 5mm Allen head, and then also a torque wrench with a number 5mm or 5mm Allen head. Loctite 242, we're going to put that on each screw. The O-ring's already in place, so let's go ahead and Loctite these up and get them going. I am going to add an extension just to get the wrench up off the tire wall. Okay, so from your guys' perspective, 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So just starting here, cross it, and then just move one over each time is really the easiest way. Okay, so we'll start with this one. There you go. That is the installation of an Alaska bush wheel on the Beringer wheel, or bush tire on a Beringer wheel. Alright guys, I want to show you real quick on how to set the master cylinder length on a Beringer master cylinder. So first we're going to take the top part of the master cylinder off, and to do that we're going to grab the spring, pull down on it, take a 13mm open box wrench and slide it onto the nut behind the top attachment point. Okay, those are going to be tightened together when it comes from the factory. So you're going to take this little ice pick or some sort of screwdriver that will fit in that hole, and then you're just going to go against the wrench so that it loosens it. And once you pop it free, if you hold a little pressure down with your thumb on this wrench, you can then just unscrew the top part. The spring is going to want to push the wrench off the bottom nut, and as I release it, there we go. There's the spring. Go ahead and remove the spring for now. Now this backing nut, you can move up and down, and that's what sets the length of your master cylinder. So I previously determined on the first one I did that if I put this all the way down so that it's right at the first thread from the bottom, that's where I'm going to want it. So I set that. There's a stopper in here that needs to stay in there. Take the spring, we're going to put the spring back on now. And then try not to let that nut move much, and if it does, watch how it moves so you can put it back. But we're going to take it, pull it down, put the 13mm wrench on it, put a thumb over it to hold, or fingers over it to hold it, then screw the top piece back on again. We're just going to screw it down tight to that backing nut by hand. Take our ice pick and then just crank it tight to the wrench to lock it. There we go. Push down on the spring, remove the 13mm wrench, and then let your spring seat in the center. Now you'll notice that I'm off on my hole angle to the pedal. The center shaft spins, so you can just turn it like that. It turns freely. And there you go. So we'll take that, put our bolt back in there, and it's now at the proper length to get the pedal where we want it. And I'll go ahead and set the rest of them, and we'll be good to go. So that's how you set the length of your master cylinder on a Beringer Master. All right, so we're doing the install on the Kitfox 7 with the Beringer brake system. And I just want to show you guys one of these ends here that I'm working on. So I'm using the clear plastic lines to run between the masters and up to the reservoir. And the reason I'm going to do that is so that I can see if there's any air bubbles in it. There's also, it's really tight quarters in through here, and when you run the stainless line, it can be a bit abrasive in here. And you can still do it. It just depends on how you route it. But I chose to go with the clear plastic. When you do the clear plastic, however, it leaves kind of a gap between the plastic line and the fitting. And you can see that by looking at this fitting here. It's a wider opening than the end of the plastic. So when you stick that on there, you end up with this opened area. Kind of looks unfinished. So what I did over here, bring it in, is did some shrink wrap on there, 3 different size shrink wraps to finish off the end. So let me show you a little bit about how that works. So again, shrink wrap kits you can get from Amazon. I think this is a Harbor Freight marine shrink kit, and it comes with all the different sizes. So what I did is I took a piece of the 3/16, it goes over the 3/16 line, a piece of the 1/4 inch, and then a piece of the 3/8. And those 3 together allow me to slide the bigger one over the actual B-nut on the compression fitting, and then step down to the 3/16 line. So this is what that looks like. So I'll compress this fitting on, and then I'll bring the 1/8 line, or 1/8 shrink wrap, up to the front. And if you shrink the tip of that a little bit, it actually slide inside that cover. And then I'll slide the 3/16 up tight, and then the 1/4 inch goes up and it comes up over the top of the B-nut like that, and then you shrink them all down. So that makes a nice clean finish. All right, so for protection where the brake line runs through the master cylinder brake attachment bracket, there's actually a hole through that bracket that you can run the brake lines from left to right. Now you got to be careful about how you're routing those, because if you go all the way through both of them, you have to loop back to get to your fitting. So you're going to have to just route those the best you can. You can see this one comes through and then comes out behind the springs for the adjustable pedals and out to the master there. So I'll probably do a little more detail on how it was routed once they're all done, because they're kind of a mess at the moment. But my point on this one is I put some of the 3/8 shrink wrap and ran 2 of the brake lines through, and that protects those 2 brake lines inside. Instead of using a rubber grommet or anything right there, I used that shrink wrap. Got the same thing over here for this brake line. I used the 1/4 inch on that one because it's just one going through there. You could also use a 3/16 on that, just running one. So basically using the shrink wrap to protect the brake line in any areas that's going to be rubbing, where it could be abrasive. Like I'll probably put some back behind right here because it could potentially rub on that spring, maybe some in here. But also leaving enough of the clear open so that you can see any air bubbles that may be in your system, so it can help you bleed the system by looking at the clear lines. So that's about the progress so far on the brake install. I'll continue to do little clips as we move along here, but it's coming along pretty good and taking my time to make all the fittings and brake lines fit real clean. All right guys, so I'm installing this parking brake, and I'll show you a little bit about why I decided to cut a new slot. This is a slot that comes in the Kitfox console cover, and with the Beringer parking brake, the lever's offset to one side, and if I was going to put that lever through, it didn't give me very good clearance off to the side for the adjustable rudder pedal lever, and I didn't really like that. I could have gone ahead and brought the parking brake up a little bit, and it would have been a really tight clearance on that fitting. So I didn't really want to do that. So what I did was I used that center slot, and that's going to be where the screws go through, and then I cut an additional slot offset to the side, which will allow me to place it about like that. And let me flip it over here, and you can see in the existing slot, that's where the screws will go through, and then it will give me a little bit of adjustability. I can move it up or down. Again, this will be covered with cloth, so you won't see that, you know, that extra slot. But then that puts the lever off to one side, allows me to use the parking brake off to the side. Then I've got a little ball that goes on here as a lever, and that will basically bring it back real close to center. So let me show you that ball. Alright, so I was down at Ace Hardware in their hardware section, and they have basically some threaded knobs. And this one actually worked out perfect. Found a screw that set in there just right. Like your local Ace Hardware aircraft supply store. But anyway, this ball actually looks really like it belongs on this thing. And that places that knob pretty close back to center. It gives me plenty of throw, keeps me away from the rudder pedal adjustment levers, and I have a little bit of adjustment I can make with that parking brake back and forth. But basically that's the solution for putting the Beringer parking brake in there, was just to cut another hole. I need to smooth it out, clean it up a little bit, but that is how I was going to go about doing it. Alright, thanks for your patience guys on this video. I know it was a little bit slow, but I did want to get something out there for you, and specifically something that shows how the Beringer system works on the Kitfox, all the different components that are used. I didn't quite finish, and I apologize for that, but I am waiting on some new reservoirs that have come out from Beringer that are going to allow us to have them offset from the master cylinder and mount right up to the master cylinder, instead of doing the remote reservoir setup, which we have done in the past. I haven't got a set of those yet. I'm waiting for them to show up to do a mock-up and make sure there's no issues with the fitment, no interference with the firewall or the frame. So once those get here, I'll mount those up, do an update video. We'll go ahead and fill the system full of fluid, check for leaks, and bleed the system down. So other than that, the brake system's done. And if you guys are interested in some of these Beringer brakes, go ahead and get a hold of me. You can hit me up at bowenaero@yahoo.com. Just email me, give me your phone number, I'll give you a call. We'll discuss which landing gear system you have and the options of the brake regulator, parking brake, the reservoirs, you know, whatever we want to do, tailor them to your needs, and get you guys into the best brakes in the industry. I'm trying to keep these videos so that I have a subject for the whole video, try to focus on one thing for you guys. That being said, I'm not focusing on one thing at a time. I'm jumping around as I have time, so I'll run out of parts or have to wait for something on the system like that parking brake reservoir, or on the Beringer reservoir. And so I'll jump into something else. So I've been working on the fuel system. I've had to wait a couple times on parts for that. So I'm jumping back and forth between these different parts of the build, and I'm trying to keep the videos organized so that they cover each part individually. So I've got a bunch more coming out. It's just a matter of finishing each task or getting enough of the task where I can make a video out of it to get to you guys. And I do appreciate your patience with the length between the last video and this one. I noticed the viewership has dropped off a little bit, and I will take the responsibility of that for not getting the videos out as current. But it is summertime, kids are out of school. I did take a trip to Idaho, our annual trip up in the backcountry of Idaho. So I'll roll some of the clips from that trip. It was fantastic, had a great time. Probably the last time I'll get to go in my Model 5. And hopefully I can take this one next year. And it'll be really interesting to see the performance difference between how the 5 performed and how this one's going to perform with the lighter weight and more horsepower. Went into some of the famous strips back there in Idaho. If you guys have been, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you should. But some of the really challenging strips up there, for example, I went into the new one is Marble, and there's another famous one called Vines. They're both pretty short. Vines is less than 800 feet, and the elevation is at 5,000 feet. And there's pretty good tree obstacles on departure. Landing, of course, I didn't see that there was any issue landing at any of these places. My concern usually is getting out. And with that density altitude there, the performance, you know, the horsepower has dropped so drastically on the Model 5 at those altitudes that it was really a challenge getting out of Vines. I mean, it wasn't, I had, you know, a safety margin there, but you're climbing and looking at trees while you're doing it. So it's a little exciting to take off with such low horsepower out of a really short high altitude strip. This is going to have a ton more horsepower, and it's going to be lighter weight. I can't wait to take the same, or go into the same airstrip and see how it performs coming out. Hopefully, you know, we'll have similar temperature and DA, so it's very comparable. But I'm very excited to get this one done and see the difference between my old Kitfox and this one. Some of the shortcomings of the lower horsepower Kitfoxes are elevation related, and that's really what I'm trying to solve with this setup. The Rotax 915 and the 914 both also solve that problem of being able to retain their horsepower at high elevation due to the turbo systems. With the normally aspirated system on the Yamaha, we're just starting with a ton more horsepower to begin with, so as the horsepower drops off at altitude, we still have a lot more than you would have even at sea level in a standard 100 horsepower Rotax. So the performance should be greatly improved. You look at the Model 5 that I have with 125 horsepower Lycoming, there's that extra weight there from the Lycoming, and then if you factor in the loss in horsepower and the DAs that we were flying at, we were well under 100 horsepower at that point. So you factor that in, and the fact you have to carry a little bit more fuel just because the fuel burns higher for Lycoming, so you're heavier there, you're heavier with the engine. It all kind of compounds as you get up above 5,000–6,000 feet density altitude, and you really start to see a performance decrease. This plane is being designed to limit that and really see better altitude performance. You know, you guys know that I do the stow drag racing. I'm not designing the plane for stool drag racing. If I was, I wouldn't have put an autopilot or any fancy anything in here. It would have been completely stripped down, and I would have put basically a huge turbo on this engine and go for horsepower only. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in building a really good airplane that will perform well at higher elevation. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish with this airplane. I have that experience with the Model 5 in those situations to compare it to, so I can't wait to get this one out to Idaho next summer. Hit the subscribe, hit the notification, and the like button, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of the Kitfox 7 Apex build.